Well, hello. It is good to see everybody. As always, want to start by welcoming our campuses. So for those of you who are at our Racine campus, I want to say hi to you. For those of you who are at our Kenosha campus, hello. Our online campus, and of course, our Weekends on Wednesday service. They never let me down. Always so much energy here. So here's the deal, guys. We're in an exciting season at Great Lakes Church, the kickoff to our fall. And if you've been around for a while, you know what that means. It is, number one, it is football season. Oh, Packer fans are a little bit nervous about Sunday. No, we're not. No, we're not. Kids Carnival is happening, our color wars with our teenagers, and then our groups catalog, which is a big way to get connected around here. That's come out, and you can sign up online. But on top of all of that, today is the launch of a brand new series called Everybody Always. Everybody Always. And really what this series is a step back to look at the heart of Great Lakes Church. So every fall, we take time to review who we are, why we started, and what Great Lakes Church is all about. Now, to kick us off today, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to do your best to kind of play along. For those of you at our different campuses, for those of you who watch online, I want you to engage at some level. But if you were to picture right now your dream car, what would that car look like? All right, just get that picture in your head. Now, how many of you, as you try to get that car in your head, how many of you think of a sports type of car? Like you're all about Lamborghini or something along those lines. All right, few here at our Weekends on Wednesday and our different campuses. How many of you think of classic cars? You go all the way back to the 40s and 50s. Certainly there are some of you. Of course, for those of you who are parents with young children, maybe for you, your dream car is a minivan. Like that's like the biggest thing that you can picture at this time of your life. Right? Or for some, maybe it's just having a car that's paid off. So I don't care what it is, if it's paid off, that is a dream car. All right, how about this? When you think of your dream vacation, you could go anywhere, you could kick back, you can relax. What does that vacation look like? How many of you picture like a cabin up in the mountains? Like to you, this is ideal. All right, I got a few of you. That's probably my ideal. How many of you, it's oceanfront property, baby? Yeah, sunshine and sand and beaches. I figured that would be the majority. Maybe it's different for you. Maybe you're a single parent, and for you, like your dream vacation is just going to the grocery store without your kids at your side. And you're totally fine with that, right? So all of us have different ideas that come to our mind when we talk about our dream, whatever, right? And I would like to ask you this question. What comes to your mind when you think of your dream church? Your dream church. All right, don't yell out the name of any local church around here, okay? Now, what is it that comes to your mind when you think of dream church? Maybe for you, at a certain point in your life, maybe it's even now, when you think of your dream church, you think of protest and politics and getting involved at a very high level in the government and really, sticking up for your rights. Or maybe when you think of church, your dream church is a church that's just jam-packed every night with something to do for you and your family because it is a social thing for you to get together with other people. Maybe for you, your dream church is a church where it's just like a family reunion. Every time you get together, you know everybody kind of agrees on everything, and it's just one big happy family. What does your dream church look like? And of course, if we could get into the minds of everybody here, what that looks like would, at some level, be different for everyone. There'd be a lot of different pictures represented. Well, 10 years ago, my family and I, we were living in the Seattle area, and we made the trek across the country back to southeast Wisconsin, where I grew up, to start Great Lakes Church. And in September of 2008, literally 10 years ago this month, there was just a handful of us sitting in my parents' living room talking about this new church we wanted to start. Family and friends just kind of sharing ideas, talking about we want it to be a place that's easy to connect with Jesus. We want it to be a place that has an abundance of grace. We want it to be a place where anybody can walk in. And really what we did is we just started dreaming of the kind of church we wanted to create. And what happened early on is we adopted a bunch of catchphrases and we adopted a bunch of slogans that really reflected what we wanted. No perfect people allowed. Come as you are. Church for people who don't like church. It's okay to not be okay. Pull my finger. Church for the rest of us, right? Church for the rest of us, the people who don't fit maybe into traditional church. That's what we wanted to create. And so what we did in the early days is we came up with this image that we used all the time to communicate to anyone who would listen what kind of church we wanted to create. And the image we had was an image of a ladder, but it was a ladder without any rungs. Because here's what we discussed. We said every single week, all across the country, people show up to environments like this because they want to connect with God. And many of them are showing up for the very first time. Maybe they went to a church environment when they were a kid. Maybe never had they ever been in a church environment. But we knew that every single week, people show up to environments like this to try to connect with God. But it's intimidating. It's scary. They show up. They look around. It's like everybody is singing. Everybody seems to engage with this Jesus. When the talk is given, it's like they'll say some verse in the Bible and everybody's nodding their heads. You know, maybe they show up to a place where everybody actually has a Bible and they say, turn to the book of Matthew, and you watch everybody like, got it! I got it! And it's like, man, I've never even heard of Matthew, and they apparently found Matthew, and it's just, they see all of these things where they just kind of feel so intimidated, and to them, everybody is kind of at the top of the spiritual ladder. And they're at the bottom. And they're saying, man, these people love Jesus so much. They just must hang out with Jesus all the time. Just get up every day and just have coffee with Jesus, those people. That's what they think about you. And we're like, we don't see ourselves like that. But that is the stereotype that often people have. Is I come in, I want to connect with God the way everybody seems to connect with God, but there's no natural progression for me. I feel like I can't just learn everything overnight. And so the question we started asking in the early days of this church is, how can we put rungs on the ladder? How can we make anybody, even someone for the very first time, hasn't been to church ever, how can we make someone just feel comfortable? Well, what can we do to help people understand what we're talking about in the grace of God in a way that is very real and very powerful? And what we've learned over the past 10 years is it's way more difficult than we ever imagined to do this. Because this isn't something that just, I can get up here and give a talk and it gets done, right? This isn't just something that if our children ministry volunteers work together, that all of a sudden it's happening, or someone who's opening a door can make happen. No, this is something where at every level of our church, we've got to be linking arms and partnering together so that collectively we communicate a single message. A message that you are welcome here and you are wanted here. And so if you are a part of Great Lake Church, if this is your faith family, let me just tell you, you are a part of communicating the message of God's grace on a weekly basis. Now, the good news is you don't have to necessarily open a door for that to happen. And the good news is you don't have to know a bunch of Bible verses, and you don't have to recite the Lord's Prayer, and you don't have to know the words of every single song. But if we're going to partner together, and we're going to link arms, and we're going to create a place where every single person who walks in can feel the love of God, can experience the grace of God, and learn about Jesus in a way that makes sense, then what we've got to do is we've got to work together and partner together in helping to love everyone always. So for the next few weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what that looks like. Now, I'll just let you know right up front, the motivation for this series came from a guy by the name of Bob Goff. All right, so Bob is an author, he's a communicator, he is a lawyer, and he is about 100 other things. One of the most dynamic communicators I've ever heard. He's just filled with life. And so this past summer, I spent some time reading a book of his called Everyone Always. And in the book, Bob tells story after story after story of how he tries to show the love of God to everyone that he comes in contact with. And he admits, he fails at times, but he says, man, I'm just constantly trying to make people feel special and feel unique. And so what I want to do today is I want to take a couple of minutes, and I want you to hear Bob just tell one of his stories. So let's do that now.
You know, I learned a lot of these things from a guy I met in Orlando. All these Christian radio stations, they get together one time a year, and they take all the artists and they all get together down at Disneyland in Florida. It's terrific. And they asked me if I would come speak at this thing. They said, pray about it. I'm like, you pray about it. It's Disneyland. I'm going. And so I landed in Orlando, and I'm a yellow cab guy. So I'm walking over to the yellow cab stand, and there's a guy with a black suit, a hat on, and a sign, and it said Bob on it. And at first I'm thinking, like, is Bob Dylan in town? Bob Marley? And then I look down and it says Bob Goff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's for me. And this guy is standing by a big black limousine. And at first I was just gonna pass him by and go get a cab, but then I thought, you know, I've never been in a limo before. If they dropped all the cash, I'm going for a ride. So I walked up to him and I said, I'm Bob. And he said, but who are you? He wanted to know if I was famous. And I said, like, no, I'm just Bob. It's been a disappointment for me too. And we got in the back of his limo and started driving through Orlando. And I'd never been to Orlando before. And after about 15 or 20 minutes of talking to this guy, I said, you know what? I've never been to Orlando, but if somebody asked me, what do you think of everybody in Orlando? I'd say they're terrific. And you know why? You're a nice guy. And if you'd been really mean to me, if somebody said, what do you think of everybody in Orlando? I would have said, I think they're all mean. You want to know how to love the people around you? You want to know how to love everybody always? You start talking behind each other's backs, but talk about the right stuff. Talk about who people are turning into. Say, have you seen Sally? Have you seen who she's turning into? Seen that pastor? Have you seen who he's turning into? Find these beautiful things. Talk it up. Don't make it up. And you know what? You'll find more of Jesus, and you'll find more of the way he sees you, because he sees who we're turning into. And here's the deal. We're turning into love. Well, we drove a little bit further, this limo driver and I was asking him how long he'd been driving limos for. And he said, I've been driving limos for 25 years. And he said, you know what? I'm going to really miss it because I'm retiring next month. And I said, buddy, have you ever ridden in the back of one of these things? They're awesome. He said, no, I'd get fired. And I said, pull over. And he did. I drove the two of us to Disneyland. It was terrific. He got there 20 minutes after me. It was a pretty long limo. And I got out of the car, I opened the door, I straightened my suit up, and I carry these medals around with me. You can get 1,000 of them for a nickel. And I started putting them on his chest. I said, you're brave, you're courageous, you're foolhardy. Do you see the way I took that turn? And when he went home to the woman he's been living with for the last 5 years, do you think he said, I met some Christian guy that said we're supposed to be married? Of course not. He said, I met a guy who told me who I am. Oh, people, just do that. Don't tell people what they want. Tell them who they are. That's what Jesus did.
Isn't that awesome? Met a guy who told me who I was. Focus on who people are and who people are becoming. Right? It's like a label maker. I'm sure at some point you've played around with a label maker. And those of you with OCD, you love label makers because you can go around your house and you can label things that are so obvious. This is the toy box. This is like, of course it's the toy box, right? This is where you put Legos. Of course it's where you put Legos. It's shaped like a Lego, but you get to do that and you get to have a lot of fun in making your house feel and look organized. But the thing about label makers, or if you don't have a label maker, maybe you're like me and you got to go old school, right? You got to use regular handwritten labels. The thing about a label maker is you can't just go around putting labels on everything you see in life. Because typically there's really only two groups of people who are able to do that. One is if you're the manufacturer or you're the creator, you obviously have the right to label something. Okay, so you, as the manufacturer, as the creator, you can put labels on the shirt, you can put labels on the shoes, on the computer, on the car, you have that right. Also, if you are the owner, you have that right. So if you purchase a product, regardless of what label's already on that product, you can relabel it because it's yours. Now, if I just showed up your home later today and I just started going around putting labels on everything, right? Coffee pot, toy box, 1980s Richard Simmons workout collection, right? Even if what I'm labeling is correct and I'm doing it in the absolute correct way, I don't have that right because I'm not the owner. Now, you know this. Every single one of us wear labels. And they're not physical labels that everybody can see, but they are labels that are very real to us. And they've created certain expectations and defined our lives in significant ways. In fact, let me just ask, in all of our different venues, you can help me out. You know I like a little bit of interaction here. How many of you, if you were to put a label on yourself, you would admit, I am chronically late? That is the label you would wear. Chronically late, all right? So a few of you here today. How many of you would label yourself as an optimist? You're an optimist, all right? You bring life and energy. How many people say, okay, I'm probably a pessimist? All right, at Weekends on Wednesday, we have a whole bunch of people that are not raising their hand, and it's because, let me guess, I'm a realist. That's what I am. How about type A personality? You just like to get things done, go, 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 right? We all got different, how many are morning people? Night people, you could stay up like 3 in the morning, you could keep going, right? How many of you would admit with loud and proud you are a geek? Like the only time the opposite sex talks to you is when they need firmware updated on their phone, you know. All of us wear labels, and labels are very powerful. They determine how we see ourselves. They determine how we see the world. And the labels we wear were placed on us by a lot of people in our life, parents. They're placed on us by teachers. They're placed on us maybe by a pastor, by a friend, by a coworker, by someone we don't even know. Labels can be harmful or helpful, depending on what that label is. But one of the most frustrating things about labels that have been placed on us, especially the hurtful labels, is that once they've been placed on us, it's very difficult to change that label. It can be frustrating because people place these labels on us and they seem to be permanent. But if we're honest, all of us at some level place labels on other people. We place labels on people based on their past, based on decisions they made for the good or for the bad. We label them. We mark them in some way. This is why more than 20 years after Monica Lewinsky had a sexual relationship with the president, she is still being asked about it. She's just defined. Another factor that plays into the labels that we place on people is the position they hold, the job title they have, their race, their demographic, right? They're a millennial, they're a Gen Xer, they're a baby boomer. We label people based on what their bank account looks like. We label people based on their season of life. They're single, they're divorced, they're a stay-at-home parent. There's lots of factors that determine the labels we place on people. The greatest factor is often just the perception we have from an initial interaction or from something we've heard. And what ends up happening is it's very, very easy to have distorted images of other people. And if we're going to love everyone always, then we have to be the kind of church, but also the kind of individual that recognizes the only one who has a right to place a label on someone is the creator or the owner. And since we do not play that role in anyone's life, only God has the right to do that. In Genesis chapter 1, we read this: so God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. Every single person who crosses our path wears the label, made in the image of God. Now, to be made in the image of God doesn't mean we are God, but it means that we reflect him in many ways. Like God, we're intellectual, right? We can think and reason and solve problems. If you're wondering why I'm grinning, it's because I got spit on my iPad, and I'm really distracted. I'm sorry, all right? But I know people are going to say, what was that smirk about? I know it wasn't a clean thought. No, it was just spit, right? So like God, we are intellectual. We can think and reason and solve problems. We are relational, which means we have the ability to give and receive love. We have moral consciousness. We have the right to discern right from wrong. We're spiritual beings, which means that when we die someday, our bodies are dead, but our spirits live forever. Every single human being is made in the image of God, and consequently, every individual matters to God. Which means we become more and more like God when we learn how to love everyone always. Now, the starting place for how to do that is a statement that Jesus made 2,000 years ago in the most famous talk he ever gave. Here's what Jesus said: "Do to others whatever you would like them to do to you." This is known as the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And so the question that every single one of us need to wrestle through is this: how do I want to be treated? How do I want other people to interact with me? How do I wish people would treat me? And so over the coming weeks, I'm going to do my best to answer this question in a way that brings clarity to this topic and helps us understand what it looks like to love everyone always. Now, if I'm going to personally answer this question, how do I want to be treated? You know, it's very tempting to say, well, like a rock star, right? I want to be treated like royalty. I want to be treated like a professional athlete, like an actor or an actress. And there's no doubt, I mean, it would be fun to be treated like a celebrity for a little bit of time. But the one thing we all know about celebrities and how they're treated is how they're treated differs from season to season based on their performance. They're treated differently based on how many points they can put on the board. Are they still able to fill stadiums? Are they still producing new music? Are they still entertaining in new and fresh ways? In fact, we saw this evidenced again this past week. In the 1980s, Jeffrey Owens played Bill Cosby's son-in-law on The Cosby Show. And everybody in the 80s knew who he was. A very, very popular show. But of course, over the years, he's lost his fame. Well, this past week, as some of you know, Jeffrey Owens was spotted bagging groceries at a Trader Joe's. So someone takes this picture, it ends up on social media, it ends up online, and initially people are just shaming him because of the fact he's now bagging groceries instead of acting for a period of time. So at the end of the day, I don't think any of us really want to be treated like a celebrity because what that looks like is unpredictable. And so the question is, how do I want to be treated? And the answer to that question, and this is where we're going to anchor for the rest of the time today, is all of us, if we're honest, want to be treated, I think first and foremost, with respect. I said we just want to be respected. I want to be treated with respect. Now, according to the teachings of Jesus, if I want to be treated with respect, then I have to learn to respect others. I have to treat others with respect. I have to treat others in a way that values them and appreciates them. One of the disciples of Jesus was a guy named Peter. 2,000 years ago, he writes a letter that ends up in our Bible. And in that letter, he addresses this topic in a very straightforward way. I mean, just 2 words. Here's what he says: respect everyone. Because everyone's made in the image of God. I dream of a church where every single person who walks through our doors feels respected. They feel respected by the way we talk to them. They feel respected by the way we interact with them. They feel respected by our body language. But of course, the challenging part for us to do that is we're not born that way. We're not born naturally respecting people. As babies, we don't naturally respect our parents' need for sleep. We just don't, right? We don't lay in bed thinking, I'm hungry, or I'm not even tired, I want to get out of this crib, so I'm just going to let them get a couple more hours of sleep, and then I'm going to let them. No, we cry and we cry and we cry until we get our way. As children, we don't naturally respect our siblings. You have the bigger bowl of ice cream, I'll take the smaller one. No, we fight, we take each other's toys. We don't respect each other. As teenagers, we don't naturally respect the parents and authority figures in our life who try to set up boundaries to keep us moving in the right direction. No, we do what we want to do. Even as adults, respect is not natural for us. It isn't instinctive. If we think a cashier is incompetent, we let the world know. If a politician says something we disagree with, if a flight attendant doesn't take care of us the way we think they should, if a teacher makes a decision that impacts our child in a way we don't like, if a coach cuts our kid and now our kid doesn't make the team, but we thought they should have been starting quarterback, right? We use our words and our actions and our body language to communicate disgust. So when we're born into this world, naturally we just treat people however we want to treat them. We say whatever we want to say, do whatever we want to do. Respect is a learned behavior. And so as we wrap up today, what I want to do is give you 5 quick ways to show respect to others. Because if we are going to continue to create an environment that makes it easy for people to follow Jesus, that puts rungs on a ladder, makes it easy for people to connect with God, that makes it easy for people to connect to the grace of Jesus, then we're going to have to partner and do our best to show respect to everyone. Now, the first way to show respect is something we've already been talking about, so I won't hardly spend any time here, but focus on who people are and who they are becoming. Every person matters to God because every person has been made in his image. When God looks at you, he doesn't see what you see. He sees you as perfect. He sees you as his child. And so he has his medals that he would place upon you, and he would say, you may see a loser, but I see a winner. When God looks at us, he says, I see a champion. When God looks at us, he says, I see somebody who's victorious. Now, that's kind of encouraging, and it's kind of fun to hear that, but I want you to hear this. When God looks at the people you despise, when God looks at the people that irritate you the most, when God looks at the people who drive you crazy, he says, you are my child. He says to them, you are a winner. You are a champion. You are victorious. And so our focus needs to be on who people are and who they're becoming, not on what they do. Another way to show respect to people is to embrace differences. Respectful people know how to disagree and still love each other. They know how to come from 2 different viewpoints and still say, hey, we totally respect where you're coming from. Because here's the thing about respectful people. Respectful people understand that everybody has a story. And I hope that every person who calls Great Lakes Church their home will get this in their heart and in their head, and that is this. Every single person has a background at some level that has shaped who they are today. And the person that may irritate you the most and the person that may just drive you crazy, they may have come through a very difficult marriage. They may have had a very difficult childhood, and it's very easy to forget that. Respectful people don't try to change everyone they disagree with. Did you know you can love someone and accept someone and still disagree with them? I do it with my kids every day. It's totally possible. The reason we call this a church family instead of a church cult is because we care way more about unity than uniformity. We care way more about being united than everybody having to look alike and talk alike and act alike. We do not have to agree with each other on everything. And the truth is, we actually have way more in common with one another than we have different. And so learning to respect each other and to focus on what we have in common is one of the ways that we grow in learning how to love everyone always. Another way that we show respect to everyone who walks through our doors and the way we interact with each other in our groups and in our different community times of hanging out and being together is we choose to believe the best. It's very easy to judge someone before you even meet them, or to judge someone based on something you heard about them, or to judge someone based on a one-time interaction. So to believe the best means I have an open mind. I love the words of Paul in 1 Corinthians 13. He simply says it this way: love believes the best of every person. Love gives the benefit of the doubt. It assumes the good. Love knows there's more to the story. Love says, yes, they said that, and yes, they did that, but here's probably the context to that. Maybe they were having a bad day. Maybe they let their emotions get the best of them. Years ago, when we were holding weekly services at Tinseltown Movie Theater, which we did for about 7 years, there was a Sunday in which we had an endless list of technical difficulties in our services. Now, at the time, we were leasing out just for adults. This doesn't include kids. Just for adults, we were leasing out 5 auditoriums. Okay, so trying to keep everything synced up was very difficult, but it was just error after error after error. People lost audio, video in their auditoriums. So by the end of that morning, I was fired up. And I was talking to a buddy of mine afterwards, and I'm like, okay, I don't mind a tech glitch from time to time, but this was uncalled for. And so I said, you're going to have to give me a minute because I'm going to call the person over the team right now because this is unacceptable. And the person, I was talking to a good buddy of mine, said, hey, Dave, before you make that call, can I just ask you a question? Do you think that the leader of the tech team got up this morning and said, my goal is to have a really crappy Sunday? I want to get Dave fired up. I want to have distractions all morning. Do you think they did that? Or do you think maybe they did their best and just it ended up the way it did? And I never made the call. I said, man, you're right. Love believes the best. You know another thing that respect does? Respect listens intently. I hope that our church has a reputation for listening. Respectful people don't interrupt and they don't dominate conversations. Respectful people genuinely want to hear the opinions and feelings of others. Respectful people are curious to know how others think because they want to grow as individuals. Respectful people ask questions more than making statements. That's why when I get asked, hey, what is Great Lakes Church view on this? What is our statement on this particular hot topic that everybody in the news is debating today? I often say, we don't have a statement. We have conversations. We'll talk to people, but we're not here to make a bunch of statements. That's what respectful people do. Another thing that respectful people do, a final thing that we're going to look at, is respectful people respond cautiously. Oh, man. Oh, for Dave Nelson, this is not easy. Because I just am an emotional person, and I like to react, and I like to get fired up, and I like to make my point. But respectful people, when they learn that they've hurt another individual, they apologize for the pain they've caused. Respectful people form opinions carefully. Can you imagine if during some sort of political debate or maybe even a presidential debate, if the presidential candidate or the political candidate is asked a question about something and what if they just responded this way? You know what? I've not really spent a lot of time exploring that issue, so you'll have to ask me in a couple of days when I can give you a thought-through response. Nobody would know what to do. They'd be like, but we need a statement. We need you to respond. Thoughtful, respectful people, they respond cautiously. They form opinions over time. And then even then, once they form an opinion, their opinions can change based on new information. Do you know how many things in the first year of this church I just swore up and down we would never do and we're doing now? We'll never get in a building. We don't need a building. We got no building. Well, I'm going to tell you what we will never do. We did it. Things change. That's what respectful people do. They form opinions carefully. They're willing to change. Respectful people choose words carefully. The author of Proverbs writes this: a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. So do you want to be a church that unites or divides? Do you want to be a group that's known for our love or for our hate? Do you want to work together to build people up or destroy other people? It's really not all that difficult. It'd be interesting if the only thing we did when we left here today was live out the words written by the Apostle Paul in one of his letters. Don't use foul or abusive language. Let everything you say be good and helpful so that your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them. Imagine if we did nothing else other than try to live out those words. Imagine if in our conversations and in our social media and in our interactions with one another, we just decided we were going to use words that were good and helpful and an encouragement to all who hear them. So we're just a few months away from our 10th anniversary as a church. In January of 2019, we're going to have a big old celebration. We'll probably celebrate all month long. It's going to be a big deal. But as we move toward that 10th anniversary, I want to remind you over and over and over again, the foundation of everything we do, the foundation of our marriage mentors, the foundation of our children's ministry programs, the foundation of what we do with our students, the foundation of our music, the foundation of our teaching, the foundation of our groups every time we gather together, the foundation is love. And love starts with respect. It focuses on who people are and who they're becoming. It embraces differences. It believes the best. It listens intently and responds cautiously. The big idea of this series is this: people will forget what you said, and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So how do you make people feel? Over the last several months, I've become increasingly aware of people that I've been close to, of how my actions or my words have hurt them, of how at certain points they felt like they were just a number to me, how they felt like they were just being used for a certain thing, and then, Dave, you're done with me. And so over the last several weeks, I've been surrounding myself with people who can speak some truth into my life and help me see some blind spots. Because I want to be that kind of individual. When people get around me, they say, man, I love being around Dave. I'm inspired. He makes me feel like I can win rather than lose. I believe our best days as a church are ahead of us. But if we are going to experience everything that God has for us, and we are going to become everything He has intended for us to become, we have got to get this respect thing down. If those who have an abundance of resources here at Great Lakes Church disrespect those with a lot less resources, we're never going to become the people God has intended for us to be. If the men in our church act disrespectfully towards the women of our church, if the adults in our church act disrespectfully to the children or teenagers of our church, we will never fully accomplish what God has us here for. If people from one background and one ethnicity at Great Lakes choose to disengage with those from another background or ethnicity, we will never become everything God has intended for us to become. If those who are straight at Great Lakes Church disrespect and mock and make those who are gay feel uncomfortable, it will break the heart of God, and it will keep us from becoming everything God wants us to become. If those from one political party always feel like it is important to make a point to those of another political party, we will be divided and not united. If those who are Bear fans don't learn to respect the Packer fans. 1 Corinthians 16, do everything with love. Now, in the coming weeks, I'm going to talk more about what this looks like. I'm going to talk about where we are headed as a church. And I'm going to talk about why I believe our best days are still to come. So I'm going to talk about some of the mission efforts we're going to get involved with, and I'm going to talk about where I'm praying and hoping to see our music go, and where I'm praying and hoping to see our children's ministry and our student ministry go, and I'm going to talk about where our groups is headed, and I'm going to talk about the future of our church. But let me just say, we can talk about that all day long. We can get all fired up and excited about it, but if we do not love each other, if we do not show respect to those coming through our doors, it's nothing. So my encouragement to you is do whatever you can to be here in this series and understand where we're headed and understand what it's going to take to put the rungs on the ladder to make it easy for people to connect with Jesus. Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this church. We thank you for the last 9.5 years. We thank you for what you've done in and through us as a faith community. I pray that as we move forward to our 10th anniversary and as we move forward to the future you have for us, you would unite us together like never before, and you would help us understand what it takes to love everyone always. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.